The very first words I said here were, I want to tell you a story. If you're new to our podcast, joining us for the first time, welcome to Sounds of the Sidewalk, where we interview members of Voices of Our City, a nonprofit based in San Diego, using music and the creative arts to build a community for those impacted by homelessness. 2 years ago, when I first met the choir, I was going through a gauntlet of challenges and uncertainty. A growing depression threatened to pull me to the ground, immobilizing me, and that's when an old fear of mine surfaced. Homelessness. Something I experienced both as a runaway teen and again when I separated from the military. Truth is, despite my current relative stability, I know what it's like to not know where you'll be sleeping, and once you know something about the world, you can't just unknow it, like an unshakable shadow. The story I want to tell you was inspired by what the artist of Voices taught me. Over the past 2 years, I've learned a lot about the meaning of home, about the power of creativity and community. I learned that home isn't just a place, but a feeling. It's about belonging and connection. This choir reminded me of my power, my agency, when I couldn't see or feel it myself. This is just what they do for each other. This podcast celebrates the light that emanates from this extraordinary group of singers and artists. No matter who you are, we all struggle at times when we really need support and encouragement. The shadows of life for most of us are always going to be there. But what do we do with the shadows? That's the question this episode explores. So, I'll kick us off with one last thought, an idea the choir inspired me to write while I sat in the dark. The shadows help you pay attention to the light. So, without further ado, you're about to listen to The Sounds of Resilience.
You're listening to
Sounds
of the Sidewalk.
Oh, okay. We got a problem.
What's going on?
This interview you did with Benjamin and Beckett, it's really good. And it's 2 hours long.
It is muy bueno, and it is muy largo. What are we going to do?
How are we going to edit this down?
How about we break it up into 2 parts?
We can do that.
We sure can.
We can do that.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Whoever you are, wherever you're listening, we didn't cut this one down. Instead, we broke it up into 2 episodes. So here is part 1 of The Sounds of Resilience.
Welcome to Sounds of the Sidewalk podcast. Today, we have some special guests, so we'll start off with introductions. My name is Enrique Rivera.
My name's Naileni Castillo, and we have 2 special guests today that we want to hear a little bit about yourselves and where you're from and what you want people to know about yourself. Let's see, who wants to start?
Awkward silence.
Hey, I'm Beckett Boggs. I'm from Alabama. I live here in San Diego now, actually El Cajon, and I moved out here about 10 months ago.
Nice.
What brought you down?
I was getting a divorce. Packed up all my things in my truck. My best friend needed help. She's got a terminally ill kid and an elder that she and her wife care for, as well as other kids. And I needed somewhere to go. So it worked out really well. I live in a tiny house in their backyard, helping raise chickens, doing organic gardening, taking care of the barn cats, and I make jewelry and do music here with you guys and. Yeah, living the life.
You're booked and busy.
Right, a little bit. Just started grad school, got it going on.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Is that all?
For now.
Okay, good. All right. My name is Benjamin Williams is my last name. We can just start with that. That wasn't, what originally it was. But I'll tell you the funny thing about Williams. Williams is the only name in American history that was ever outlawed by our Congress.
Wow.
They outlawed the name Williams. Check it out. Do your own research. But anyways, I'm Benjamin. What's up, people? So I was born here in San Diego. Wait, I know y'all don't believe that. No, really. I was born here in San Diego.
Right.
An African brother, Ghanaian mostly. And, what about me? I am so gifted. I've been given so many gifts. And so I don't know what I do. I do a bunch of things. But the things I enjoy doing, drumming. I'm a percussionist. I play a bunch of instruments. So when people say percussionist, that generally means they play a lot of instruments, not just the drums. So just why I use that word. I sing. Oh God, I think I'm a pretty good singer. I'm coming along. I used to dance, but that's coming back. I teach. Anything I know, I can teach. Anything you know, you can teach. So I enjoy teaching. I enjoy sharing just my experiences so we can all grow.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful.
We're all teachers in this world.
Ain't that the truth?
We are. We really are.
Love it.
Yeah, to kick it off a little bit, today's episode is based on resiliency. So I think a good question to start off would be, what does resiliency mean to you?
Define resilient.
It's the ability to be happy, successful again after something difficult or bad has happened. And like in other words, it's just like, what is that motivation that keeps you going?
Leaping back,
through all
rebounding, recoiling. Yes, I'm with you. Got it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
You ever heard that song by Chumbawamba? I get knocked down, but I get up again. Ain't never gonna keep me down.
Yeah.
It is the motto for my life.
It's your theme song.
Starting out young. Like I've faced challenge after challenge after challenge, but even if I got knocked all the way down, I still woke up the next day. I still put one foot in front of the other. I still moved forward, like kept going, kept breathing. There were so many times that I didn't want to. Like times where I wanted to just lay there and die, honestly. But there were also like so many moments where I realized that by moving, I was giving myself something that I was never going to get from anybody else.
No.
Nobody's going to be able to give that to me. So resiliency is like not just an innate part of us, but something that you have to cultivate by experiencing it, by making the choice to continue putting that foot in front of the other.
I like your point of view. I really do enjoy it, and I relate to it quite a bit. But I'm also curious, what are your thoughts?
I couldn't say it any better than she just did. I'm just saying. That's the beautiful definition of it, right? So looking at how we choose to do what we do, right? So some people don't. Like she's saying, you have to make a effort to keep moving. Some people don't, right? And what I mean by that is that you're conscious of what you're doing, you're thinking about it, and you are present with it. Because if you're not present, I would ask the question, are you living? If you're not present, are you really living? Right? Because if I'm not in the moment with whatever it is I'm doing, where am I?
What is that? I think therefore I am. Because if you're not envisioning the world, if you're not in it, in the moment, in it, you cannot be experiencing it because you're not thinking about it.
Correct. Right. And so I talk to people about these things because they make me curious, right? And how do people bring themselves present, right? And so for myself, I find the easiest way for me to stay present is to breathe. Just to breathe. And I mean breathe deeply. I mean, most people don't exhale completely. I suggest you take some time, blow all your air out, fill your lungs all the way up. Do that a few times. And that allows me to just come right back to the moment. right? And so when I'm in the moment, then everything flows, right? I don't even think of the word resilient because it all just keeps moving, right? As it moves, I have to ask myself, do I want to do this or do I want to do that? Do I want to do this? Am I going to do that? Or am I going to do nothing? All of those possibilities are questions that we get to answer for ourselves.
You're making active choices.
You are
every
choosing.
single time because
right.
you're paying attention to the moment.
I love her words. Active choices. Whoa.
Yeah.
I'm making active choices. I'm going to keep that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like
love
it
that.
too.
And I think in like resilience, it's like you said, it's a choice. Like for you to continue on your path. Some people just want to stay stuck, or they've resigned to whatever situation they're going through, and they just like give up. And I think like in my case, I was incarcerated for 22 years. And even though it looked like there was no hope and like it was a dark place, and it's the California systems of oppression, and but I always had hope, and it's like you said, it's step by step, until finally I always seen light at the end, and I just held on to that, and I just kept walking step by step, but I also had to make conscious decisions that would take me to that end, which was to regain my freedom. And by grace, it was given to me, So I was like, but yeah, I think that's what it is. It's like you have to make choices. Like if I want to be free again, then I have to make conscious decisions that will lead me to freedom. If I make decisions that are contrary to that, then I might not make it. I would have never made it out. But because every day I was getting up and I was thinking, like, someone in there told me, like, this is my home. I'm like, this is your home. This ain't my
Tell
home.
'em.
Like,
Come on, man.
I'm trying to go home. Like, I want to see my parents again.
Right.
And so for me, it was like that was a choice every day. Like, and like you said, there's sometimes like you just want to die, and you just but you have to keep that. That's a thought that's running through your head that can bring you down. So you have to overcome those thoughts.
Right.
Like sometimes I would wake up and it's just concrete walls, and you're just like, dude, am I ever gonna make it out of here? Like, and you if you stay in that thought process, you might not ever get out. I see people go crazy, and they're like, just over time, and they lose it because they can't deal with what's going on. But
Hope is a beast.
yeah,
Yeah.
Hope is a beast. Like it can tear you up from the inside out if you're not making choices to push yourself forward with it. Because like you can hope for something all day long, and if you're not doing something about it, nothing's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if you're trying things, if you're trying and failing, you're still getting somewhere, because we only learn through failure.
Mm-hmm.
We don't learn by doing the right thing and getting it correct. Like that's just, oh, we did it, we move on. We learn when we make a mistake and go, oh, how do I make it better next time?
right.
I did something wrong. How do I make myself accountable? How do I own up to it? How do I say what I did? How do I move forward and make myself better? Like that's the essence of hope. It forces you to reckon with the now, like we're talking about, in the moment, and say, how do I get from here to there by using it?
But-
Were you in a wheelchair before?
Yeah, I was. I had a car accident in 2008 and flipped the car upside down and ground my head into the glass. It was pretty rough. I was trapped in the car for a bit, and they got me out. And I was still mobile for a little while, but the brain injury that occurred caused a issue with my immune system and my muscles, so that my body tried to kind of curl up like a dead spider, which prevented me from standing. I couldn't stand for more than 5 seconds without massive cramps pulling my legs in and knocking me down, literally. I spent 4 years in bed in a wheelchair. Much of that time, I wanted to be as unconscious as possible and had no ability to be. It was dark. I was married to a very, very angry alcoholic and trapped in bed. And there were a lot of things that happened that I never want to have to think about again, but also a lot of moments of resilience and a lot of moments where I said, hey, it may not feel like I have a future, but I'm still alive today. So what am I going to do?
Right.
And I'd be stuck in that bed laying there, just wishing for things to be different. And eventually, like one day, I don't know, I saw a show or something and I was like, I want a butterfly garden. And that was it. Like that was a moment where hope intervened and said, well, here you go. Here's something to grow towards. And I ended up having a surgery that helped me get out of bed and get on my feet a little bit. I started with sitting up 30 seconds at a time, like such a small goal, but it was so immense to do. Those 30 seconds were interminable. It was unending. But I did it. And then I did it again the next day and the next day. And eventually I was walking enough where I could leave the marriage. I've had a family member I was able to move in with, and I took that time to heal. I kept walking. I started at my grandmother's driveway, going like 20 feet. And by the end of 2 years, I was at 2 miles.
Wow.
It, like that 2 miles would wreck me for the day. I was done. Like that was it. That was all I could do. But I would then be in bed. But it was still progress, right? Like no matter how slow it felt as I was going through all of that, I was still growing. So it's now 15 years later since that accident. When it happened, I couldn't have, I stopped being able to have conversations. I stopped making sense. My brain stopped connecting words together in ways that flowed. I would substitute words. So instead of the word green, I would say salad. So it would be related, but not correct.
Right.
And now I'm in grad school again. Like,
That's right.
If you sat me down and told me what my life was going to look like, I would never believe it. I would be like, you are insane. There's no way I'm going to go through all of those things and still come out on top. There's no way that is humanly possible. But I tell you, I'm sitting here a living miracle.
Living miracle. That's right.
I'll say consciousness. Because everything that we're talking about requires you to think about where you're at and what you're doing. How are you doing it? I love that you said you made conscious choices, right? Because I believe lots of people make unconscious choices, meaning they don't bring their awareness, they don't come to the moment, they don't come to the now and decide in the now. It's just they go off of the things that they've already learned, the things that they believe that may not be their beliefs, but they continue to do that just because it's comfortable. That's because what they know. So to consciously ask yourself, right, what am I here to do? What did I come here? What's my purpose? How do I complete that purpose? I don't think many people have thought about it, right? I know I came here for a purpose, a reason, right? So who's going to figure that out? Nobody can figure that out but me.
Right.
So I've got to ask myself the questions. That's where the conscious comes in, right? If you're not asking yourself the questions, then you're probably not moving effortlessly in the direction you want to go. So I ask people, how much effort do you want to use, right? Do you want the message to come to you 20 times before you hear it or just one? somewhere in between, right? So each of us have to work with those things, and those messages come to us in so many different ways, right? Whether it comes from another person, from a billboard, from a sign, are you hearing the messages? It requires you to be conscious. To listen requires your consciousness. I think that's another thing Americans in general have a difficult time doing, is really listening. Right? Because when you're listening, you're thinking about what the person is saying to you, coming up with your own thoughts and ideas. And then it's an exchange, right? We're talking about something, right? So it's an exchange with someone, as opposed to just thinking about what you want and not hearing what the other person is saying, right? So then we don't have that exchange. It's an exchange of information.
I have lots of those moments where it's like I've got to get this information out there,
Yes.
rather than let me absorb what you just said
Right.
and see if it lands. And then
Right.
how does that
Connect.
affect and
That's
connect
right.
the conversation that we have?
That's right. Right. Because that's what makes it a conversation, right? Because if we don't have that exchange, it's something else, in my opinion, right? You can call it talking, right? But that exchange and it's an exchange of energy. So let me make sure I'm clear that we're talking about the way the energy between the two people occur, right? Is bound to the words that we use. So think about what you're saying. Express it in a way that is clear. That's my practice. And that's the other thing, is that everything we do, in my opinion, is a practice. But people don't talk about it like it's a practice. We speak of it as if we know how to do it and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, yeah, so you know how to do it. But if you keep practicing, you become better. Mm-hmm. The only way you can become better is to keep practicing, right? So I ask, myself, same thing I ask other people, what it is that you're doing. What are you doing? What is it? What goal have you set for yourself? What is it you're trying to attain? Because if you don't have that in place, then you're just sort of moving through. Unconscious. I want to be conscious of everything that I do. And I don't always understand the reason why, but I understand the energy, the feeling of, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do now.
Have you ever heard the saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Right? Like it's about the practice of it. Okay. It is not about what the result is. It is not about the goal. It is not about what you're going for. It is about making beauty in the practice of it.
Yes.
And that's where we can find those real connections.
Mm-hmm. Which makes life fun. Yes! Hey, don't forget that thing. That's what makes it fun, man. When I can connect. Yeah. Goosebumps.
I'm just loving this conversation, honestly, because I find I'm connecting with both of you and what you're saying, because the reality is that what resiliency is, it's not the big things, which, yeah, that's what you acknowledge, but it's the everyday making that conscious effort to get up, wash your teeth, get up, go eat.
That's right.
It's the little things that you might not really think about too much, but that's what makes the biggest impact, what you do day to day.
Until I started doing self-care, I was not going to be capable of getting out of bed. There was no way until I focused on myself, right? And on the drive over here, right? I was doing affirmations on the drive over here because, anytime I'm going to talk about my life or my life story, I want to remind myself first that I am a whole person. I am a fabulous person full of love and good energy and hope who wants to put that out there to other people. And I cannot do that if I'm not filling my buckets first.
Say that again, please.
I cannot do it if I'm not filling my buckets first.
Come on.
So reminding myself that I'm a good person, that I've got a lot to give is a reminder that I have to manage my self-care. Managing my self-care is not always pretty. Sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it's routine. Sometimes it's just sitting up for 30 seconds. Okay, I can do this. Sometimes it's doing laundry and going to the doctor. sometimes it's sitting on the beach for 30 minutes and doing nothing else but watching the water.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the most crucial part to any form of healing. Most crucial part is understanding. My belief is that you have to take care of yourself first. Wait, I want to make sure y'all heard me. I said you have to take care of yourself first. I don't care if you're a mom, a dad, or single, or whatever. If you're not taking care of yourself first, how can you go and take care of others?
I agree. I mean, I always say that.
Right.
If because this is what I do. I mean, every day I meet with people and I navigate through whatever life is throwing at them. I mean, it could be very difficult situations. It could be, something that's not too difficult. But at the end of the day, I know if I'm not okay with myself, if that day, let's say I'm just having a terrible day, that already sets me up for failure when I'm going to meet with someone else, because I'm not going to be able to put in the same 100% effort than if I were to be 100%.
Come on.
Because it really does bounce off. If whatever you do, it's always going to have a chain reaction. Even if it's saying hi to someone in the morning, saying goodbye, how are you? Just acknowledging that whatever you're going to do, it's going to have a reaction.
We're talking about physics here.
Yeah.
We're talking about energy. We're talking about something that's not created, it's not destroyed, it's just transmuted. It's just changed from one thing to another. So if you're putting in that good energy, then it's great. But if you're only receiving negative energy, like if you're having a down week and only bad things are coming to you, then you're gonna struggle trying to put good back out. Like that's where that self-care comes in.
Isn't that powerful? Like you have the ability, right, to make this choice of I'm gonna bring some goodness today, or I'm gonna bring me and all my junk and everything I'm carrying into, a conversation or into a meeting or into my work, and I do that too. Like I don't like to bring like all the drama with me, like a backpack, and I'm like, hey, open it up, and throw it out in the room. I like to, try to keep myself in a place where I can be of service to others. And if I want to be of service to others, then I have to be in a positive and I have to be on that good vibe.
Right. In the right state of mind.
Yeah,
that's
right.
sort of what I call
And
it.
that's
yeah.
like
How do
a
you
conscious
ground?
choice, right?
That's right. It is a conscious
Because
choice.
before I used to live making unconscious decisions. I'll get drunk, I'll get high, I'll do all this crazy, and then I'll make a choice in all that.
Right.
And what I found out is that don't work in life,
Come on.
There's consequences that come with making unconscious decisions.
Then you're
Whereas
left making up
before,
the difference.
I didn't stop to think like, what's going to happen if I do this? I would just react.
Right.
And then I would worry about everything later. Like, I'll face the music later. But in the moment, it was just like, I just react. Right. And now I take the time, like, because I learned,
Yes.
that conscious decision is going to take me to a better place than just me, reacting to something.
That's
So
right.
now I think about what's the ripple effect of this.
Right.
Correct.
But how do
Because
you do
sometimes
that?
we make a choice and it ripples and flows out through a
Right.
bunch of humans, not just one,
That's right.
So that's kind of like, what she was saying, like when I come to work or when I'm trying to bring some positivity to others, then I have to be in that state of mind too. So
How do you do that? How do you ground yourself to put forward just the good that you want to distribute, right? And get rid of the negative energy in you. How do you let go of or accept the hard things and push forward that good energy that you want to put forward in the world?
I think
Good question.
I
That
think
is a
you're
good
like a
question.
perfect. It's a perfect example of you like sitting up 30 minutes a day until you were like able to walk, and now you're here. It's like he said, it's practice. Like we have to practice these things.
Yeah.
If we wanna get somewhere that
The
so-
practice of progress.
But there's more to it, though.
That's another one. I'm gonna keep
But
that.
that's a good one.
Right?
I feel like one thing that is important to acknowledge is boundaries too.
Yes.
Having like your boundaries, you have to know your boundaries in work, personal life, and you have to know your own boundaries.
If we go back to the analogy of the bucket, you can't hold water if you don't have walls.
You can't.
You just can't. If you got holes in it, you're gonna let go of all that water.
Exactly.
So right, like having boundaries is probably the first thing that allowed me to leave that marriage, which is what allowed me to start healing and get to where I am today. Otherwise, I'd still be in bed or I'd be dead at this point.
Yeah. Wow. But you brought up a great word. You said reaction, right? You used to just react, right? And so I think about those things, right? And react, and then there's a response, right? So I want to respond as opposed to reacting, right? Because when I react, I'm not thinking. I'm not figuring out what is the best way for me to address this issue in this moment. I'm just reacting from my nerves, my beliefs, my all of that stuff, whatever's in that moment. But when I respond to something, I was like, whoa, they're doing this. What do I need to do to make, and then I can respond in a way, come from a place that's truthful, from my heart, as I like to say, right? That's the place of love, right? Now, everything. This is really, I'm glad you brought up this stuff because y'all just got my mind popping. But now everything that I suffer is created by me. I want people to understand all of my suffering is created by the way in which I think. If I think that this is bad and then I see that happened and now I'm start feeling bad. And like, so, hey, I said, I don't want to suffer. I said, I want to give that up. I want to do the least amount of suffering as possible. So duality locks me into places that I don't want to be. So I let go of duality. I let go of good and bad.
Either or.
Either or, this or that. It's like, this is what I feel. This is what I'm going to do. All that other stuff, it doesn't matter. It's a distraction for me. So as I practice that more, as the distractions left, my life began to become more simple, easier, and a lot more fun. Right. So, like our other guest, Beckett, I had an injury too, 2008. Oh my God. Yeah. Huge. Again, major change in my life. I was a super active guy, did everything that I wanted to do. Played volleyball, rode bikes, ran with the kids, whatever I wanted to do. Fell, broke my leg, and I couldn't do any of it. And to this day, this is 2024 now. I'm still not doing all of those things, but I'm closer to doing that. But during that time was when I got a divorce too. It was like, just wasn't a healthy relationship, right? But it was the first time in 50 years that I ever lived alone. You talk about a change. I never lived alone. Never. Now I'm 50 and I'm living alone. It was like, wow, no kids to take care of. Wow, no practice, no nothing. It was shocking. It was shocking. I didn't know what to do with myself. My mind was like, wow, I've got all this time. And so I spent a lot of time with myself. I figured that this was an opportunity for me to get to know me in a different kind of way, right? To stop looking outside of myself, right, for the answers that I already have, for the answers that I'm the only one that has, in my opinion, right? Nobody can tell me what I need to do for me. Only I can. So even if someone suggests something to me, I still have to actively choose to do it. That's what makes it my choice. So everything is my choice. So how I choose to think about the things that happen to me has an effect also on how I respond to those things. So by removing the duality, right, it allows me just to see the thing for what it is and then respond to it in an appropriate way, as opposed to getting emotionally excited over something that's not really emotionally exciting for me.
Yes.
Right. It was like, so I changed the way in which I perceive it, the way I think about it, and then that allowed me to respond in a much more appropriate manner.
how we frame what it is that happens to us
Yeah.
makes a big difference in how we think about it. Like when I moved out here, I was stressed to the nines. Like, I mean, clearly anybody in the midst of a move is going to be stressed. But not only was I moving, I had uprooted my entire life. I'd left everything I'd known, traveled 2,000 miles plus across the country, and landed somewhere where I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know what my life was going to look like. I was thrust into a situation where all of a sudden all of my medical scenarios were changing. I found out that I wasn't diagnosed with this progressive illness that I had been diagnosed with for 10 years, that I'd been taking all these medications for 10 years.
Wow.
So all of these things upended my entire existence, right? My brain was just exploding with like, oh my God, what do I do now? How do I not just react? How did I, I don't know how I held it together, right? But the conversation about reacting versus responding is really important, because I was reacting without even knowing it with a friend of mine who was telling me I was being defensive, and I couldn't see it for the longest time. But I kept listening. I stayed open to their criticism about it, and I kept paying attention to my behavior. And that openness that I had learned as a product of trying to respond versus reacting, right? That openness allowed me to then figure out what I was doing that was causing me to be defensive when I didn't need to be. They were trying to help me. They were honestly trying to help me. And I was afraid. And that's what it centered on, basically. I was afraid that if I took the next step, like, this is the stupidest thing. I was afraid that if I took the next step, I would succeed.
It happens.
It does.
And I think it's a good way to introduce, I think, the idea of knowing yourself, because that is so key in all of this, and not just in resiliency and putting your boundaries, but I feel like that's a key component. If you do not know yourself, then nothing's really going to happen for you, because that's when things start happening. That's when you start making those conscious efforts, putting up your boundaries, making the choice every day. When you actually take the time to know yourself and know what it is you want, what you can take, the way you're going to react, that's the key to it.
Right.
Another
Agreed.
thing that I see that's
Gigantic.
is powerful is like we operate based on what we believe, right? And for a long time, I grew up around cartels, around gang members, drug dealers, so I was a criminal. So all my thinking was based on how am I going to get away with this? How can I do this without getting caught? And you take those beliefs in that, don't say nothing about this, don't say nothing about that. There's all these rules that the streets that you pick up, right? And those become your beliefs, and you operate from that. So now I'm taking these beliefs with me everywhere I go. And when I make a choice, it's based on those beliefs. So I had to transform the way I was thinking.
From
I
the
had to
ground
challenge
up.
my own beliefs and be like, is that really healthy for me? Like, is that real for me? Because that's what got me here. So can I continue to believe the things I believe and make it to where I want to go? No. So I had to change my perception, the way I seen things, the way I looked at things, believe my own beliefs.
You had to rechart your path,
Right.
like changing your entire existence, because you had to start looking at it from a different way.
Right.
That's beautiful. And that
It
just
is.
falls right into with knowing yourself.
Yeah.
Right? To know yourself, you've got to do what he's talking about, what Enrique just said, right? You've got to be willing to do it. And so that's what my time alone, right? So
Yeah.
I took 3 years. I said, I'm only going to do the things that make me happy. I have fun doing drumming, singing, playing. And then I'm just focusing on me. I'm going to get to know who I am, what it is I want, what it is I believe. And when you get up every day and you do that for 3 years, not in any relationship, not seeing anybody, just me, right? Just me.
Me, myself, and
I got to know myself a lot better. I got to understand what I believed because I questioned it. It's like, do I believe this? Do I believe that? No. Whoa, I got to get rid of this one. And then it's like, well, how do I get rid of this? Right? And then you go into the perception of how do I change that way of thinking for myself, right? And everyone has to sort of ask yourself these questions because how you need to do it is you're the only one that really needs to know. You're the only one that does know. Other people may do it the exact same way you do. They may, but they still had to choose that, right? So we have to find it for ourselves. How we find it, I don't care.
Right. And it's hard.
I don't care. But you got to find it.
We're
And make it
really,
happen.
like, we're really good at convincing. I know I am, at least. I don't want to speak for everybody, right? But I'm really good at convincing myself of things that aren't true.
Me too.
I'm really good at convincing myself that I'm a terrible person or that life is just too hard and I'm not going to make it. And that's not the case because I've made it every day since. Like I've gotten this far.
That's right.
There's something in this world that is keeping me tuned to it, and I don't know what it is. I don't know how to keep going sometimes. I just know that if I'm awake and my eyes are open, I'm going to do it. Right? And I think anybody on this earth is going to they have no choice but to keep going if their eyes are open, right? We have the choice to hide from ourselves. We have the choice to stop listening.
Yes.
And that happens a lot.
Right.
We are really good. I convince myself of things all the time. I'm telling myself stories about victimhood. I'm telling myself stories about blame and why it was okay for the things that happened to me to happen. Like, and none of that, you're right. Like, none of it matters.
Right.
Because that's part of the right versus wrong.
That's correct.
That's part of the good versus bad.
That's right.
Black versus white. Like,
That's
there
right.
is, it just is. It's all
is.
one.
That's right. It just is. Right. And so if we remove all of those things, we can come together. That's my belief. But I don't know. So what I find is that people get active in other people's business, which means it's none of theirs.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where most of the drama is created. When somebody is talking about something they don't know or understand like they do, it creates a problem. So stop doing that.
If
Stop
it's not
gossiping.
your business, it's not your
business,
problem.
right? And
It's
I'm
not your
talking to
business, not your
everybody.
problem.
Gossip is a problem in America. I mean, they sit on TV and gossip.
I mean, that's
I
all
don't watch
reality
TV.
TV is.
I don't watch TV. I don't know. Did y'all hear that? I don't watch TV because of that stuff. Because of the level of violence, I want you to just be aware that that has an effect on how you perceive the world.
But like Enrique was talking about, that's the framework. If the framework with which you view the world is violence, then you're only going to see violence.
That's why I stopped watching TV.
Right.
Okay, exactly. Right? Because it brings that to the forefront. It allows you to focus on that energy as opposed to being present. Right. If I'm noticing, oh my God, there's a fight over there. If I'm noticing, oh, this woman's arguing with that guy over there. Oh my God, the teller at the bank is screaming at the customer. All of that stuff, it's there. It's like, I don't care. Not my business.
Right. Can you
Right?
feel the breeze on your face?
So what that did for me is it allowed for me to see that everything that happens to me, my belief, everything that happens to me, right, is happening to move me in the direction I need to move, right? Am I getting the message?
Are you taking the step?
Am I listening to the message? And then am I doing something? Because we all do something, but what we do is one of the most important things that determines what happens to us. Mm-hmm. What we do is one of the most important things. So how we get to what we do is how we perceive things, then what we think about it, and then we decide what we're going to do.
My biggest pet peeve are the people that do nothing but complain, and don't take action. Like, if you don't put a step forward, then don't complain about it.
Okay, I can't cuss
I
on here,
agree.
but I would tell them to shut up.
Right.
in a real nice way. I just remove myself from those situations, but
That's a good boundary.
Yes,
That's a good
it's
boundary to have.
That's a
right?
boundary,
I learned.
yeah.
That's right.
It's a good boundary. And It's difficult. Go ahead.
Wow, guys. I know we want to keep this conversation going, but we're going to interrupt it because boundaries.
Boundaries.
So you just listened to an episode.
That's part 1.
We want to thank all the listeners that have taken the time to listen to the podcast. Please share with family and friends and continue to support. We really appreciate it.
And a special thank you to the Prebis Foundation for making this podcast possible.
Quick announcement. Join us at our annual fundraising concert, Music Brings Us Home, Saturday, October 26th.
For more information about our upcoming concert and ways to support the podcast, head to voicesofourcity.org.